Hey, Opposing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about when do you start your mix down. I'm wearing a hat. Let's jump into this. So, if you're mixing a band, it's pretty simple because while you do is you record the band, you mix it while you go to get the best performance out of them. You bring in the people who need overdubs, you mix a little bit more, maybe because they want something different for their overdubs, and then you turn down all your faders after you have all your audio files. Like you're good to go, you're going to mix it. So you turn them all down, you start mixing. You have a pretty clear starting point. But if you're a author or producer, so you're writing your music and you're producing it, sometimes you need to mix for some inspiration. Like maybe your bass line sounds like junk. It's not that inspiring, but it's the bass line you want. You just need to mix it. So you mix it in, and then you go along your merry way. What I find is there are two main methods people really push mixing in this context. The second one I think is far more professional, but I have heard a couple of professionals promote this. I've tried it, and depending on how the track is going, I may or may not stick with it. So when you're working, I tend to do minimal fader movement with my faders, and things just tend to be pretty loud. And what you'll do is you stick a mastering chain on your master bus. That way you're basically mixing a master. The mastering and the mixing happen in the same stage. Some people who do this and do it pretty well promote this. However, I have seen a huge, without exception, every bedroom producer who's come to me and asked about this, though, whenever they ask for like help with a particular kind of master or whatever, this is the method that they're using. And it's like, no, don't do that. Like, no, that's so much harder. I think it's a million times harder. It's way harder to separate where things happen. A lot of times they're trying to do creative work and mixing at the same time, and their mixes come out sounding like junk because they're mixing up roles or getting distracted by different tasks. So you can get pro results by doing it that way. And basically when you start your mix, there's really no starting point to your mix, which does not help. So what you do is after you finish your creative process and you are done or stuck, as most people get, you should set apart a separate time. You're going to come back and you're solely going to mix it. And that's great if you want to mix like this, but I'm telling you, it's so much harder. So, but people do results. Again, this is totally a game of opinions in some ways, but let's go ahead and go over to method 2, the method that I've seen every professional in a studio I've ever seen thus far use. That is, you have a separate mixing session. You do all your creative work. You do the mixing you need to get that done and to be inspired. And then you turn everything down. Of course, I will use method 1 occasionally, but a vast majority of the time, you turn it all down. You completely mute it all. And then you turn up thing by thing, comparing one thing with another thing. You get it sounding just the way you want. And you mix to peak to a certain level. You see, we have a clear starting point where we mix. And because we have that, it gives us a vast advantage, especially the ability to turn things up one by one like that and really hear what things sound like. And you also have the advantage of being able to crank your volume up, and you get a lot more, your transients are a lot more impactful that way. And so the first time I did this method, it blew my mind how good I could get something to sound if I like did this and just turned the volume way up. But then I was so crushed when I had to master it because you're sacrificing like exactly what you just worked so hard to get. I had something so clean. I didn't even know I could get it to sound that clean. And then you're sitting here just destroying it with this darn mastering process. Oh, it's not that it sounds bad, but I mean like, it's like it sucks. I hated it at first. I've gotten over it since, but it really does. When you get good at mixing like that, it really is kind of painful to do a master. And people always talk about, oh yeah, crush it, whatever. It's just like, I think it says how much you worked about getting the sound to deliberately sound the way you want. So there's that. I often do methods in between too. So maybe I won't mute everything. Like I literally, when I'm mixing and I have a separate mixing session, I'll just silent. And then I'll bring stuff up one by one. Occasionally, the clipping or whatever I had going on in the session is important to the sound. So I'll render those out before I turn everything down. But most of the time, that's not the case. So some basses, they just respond differently. You can actually read in the manual about what happens on a channel insert when it clips, because it does things differently than you would expect. But that's in the manual, so you can go read that. So yeah, it's just interesting. Those are my 2 cents on when to start mixing. I think you should always have a clear starting point on when you want to start your mix. And even if you were mixing as you went, I highly recommend the second method. That's the method I'm going to teach you. It's a method I've seen used in the studio every single time. I've never seen anyone in a studio do method one. I've only seen people online who are usually self-taught do this. And I'm also usually unimpressed with the mix they get, usually. They do produce some interesting hierarchies of importance, but overall, I think it's just yeah. You can get the same results and much cleaner results by doing it the second method, like pretty much every time. So it is a lot more work though, and I think that's where the people who do that they're trying to break the three rule from earlier, and it's like the three rule will get you. But anyways, that's my stuff. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.